Hey, what's going on? What is the word? Happy Friday. Happy Friday. Hope everyone's doing good. Hope everyone's doing good. Uh, how's everyone's Friday going? Man, I can never predict how the turnout's going to be in this room. Sometimes it'll be like 11 in the morning and y'all just pile in. And some days it's like Friday night. I figure everyone's having. Yo, Young Stokely, Sly, New Wave, New Ways. How you feeling? Famous last words, but this should be a short one. I should stop saying that because whenever I say that, it ends up not being a short one. But real quick, man. Um, have y'all seen Kevin Hart's new comedy special? It was. I don't know if anybody liked it. I wasn't that crazy about it. I couldn't finish it, but oof. Yeah, hit that like button. Hit that like button. Hey GW. Hey Revolution. For people who are already patrons, just want to let y'all know. We now have an annual subscription, saves you 10%. So if you go patreon.com champagne sharks, you can sign up for a year at once, and it's a pretty good deal. Less than a cup of coffee a day, like Saudi Struthers used to say. Yeah, so also feel free to share. In fact, that's what I forgot to do. I forgot to share with the family that we're on. I want to talk about Obama's thing where he was saying that he was using Marxism to get laid and all that, and what I think that was all about. I don't really think it was really about using Marxism to get laid. I think he had a reason behind that, and I wanted to talk about it real quick. And it's kind of, I think he's very conscious about his legacy and how he wants to be remembered. And I think that's what was going on with that. He had a very specific agenda with that. And he weighed a bunch of different evils, and he thought, looking a little bit like a friend zone sad sack horn dog, was a small price to pay compared to the alternative. Let me just let people know we're on. Okay. Yeah, anyway, comment, like, share, subscribe. If you, that's always. Yeah, you know what? I like to keep people guessing. And we should have a schedule, but it just doesn't work out. So I think this is better. This is better. Yeah, but anyway, if you want to upgrade to the annual subscription, just go to patreon.com/champagne sharks, and that option is now there. A lot of y'all have been taking advantage of it. Thank you. And as usual, we're going to try to enrich your lives with a lot of information and takes that you don't usually get everywhere else. So if you appreciate it and you have the means to do so, I know it's tough times. I know it's Corona. I know it's COVID. I know it's a precarious time. But if you have the wherewithal and you enjoy the value we bring, then I humbly beseech you to either hit us up in the super chat or with a super sticker in the chat section on the side. So hit the super chat if you're enjoying the stream, or you can do Venmo or Cash App at Champagne Sharks, or you can do PayPal at champagnesharks@gmail.com. As usual, that goes toward a whole bunch of stuff like lighting. If you notice how bright it is in here, that's thanks to y'all. Mic stands, shock mounts, new mics, all that type of stuff. It gets spread out amongst all of us. So yeah, PayPal, champagnesharks@gmail.com, or using this link, or Venmo or Cash App, Champagne Sharks. And Of course, as usual, the super chat, which is right in the stream. But some of y'all told me y'all don't like that, so that's fine. If you send us a donation via Venmo, Cash App, or PayPal, let us know in the chat so I can shout y'all out and show my appreciation. Anyway, let's get down to business. I was talking earlier this week about works versus content, and we are awash in a period of content. Content is just stuff. Content is just stuff to consume. Like a work is like I was trying to think of how to differentiate content between I was trying to differentiate between content and the work. And the work is something that it's made to stand the test of time. To a certain degree, it's finite. Like content just breeds more content, and content just exists to promote more content. And in commercial art or commercial anything, in corporate politics and whatever, the line between content and a work is not easily divided, you know? Um the the like very few things are purely a work in commercial art or corporate politics, and very few things are purely content. Like, um a movie, no matter how much of a work it is, if it's for a major studio, it is also going to work as a form of content, and same for content. Like TV is pretty much content. You have to, especially the old network model, 24 episodes a season. Not all of them are going to be gems, and a lot of them are going to just be filler or just something to just a clip show or just something to hit that 24 episode count for the season. But within those episodes, you're going to get an episode or an episode arc that is going to be very much a work in and of itself, So to give another example, comics are a perfect example. Comics are just content. They're open-ended superhero comics. It is like, series that go on for like decades. Some of them are going on like 90 years, and it's pure content. Month in, month out, someone's going to have to slap together something, and a lot of it exists to promote other stuff. But within that, you might have a graphic novel or a 3-issue story arc that, is considered like a classic storyline or a classic arc. So almost all commercial works have an aspect of content to them, while content has aspects of being a work. And but more and more everything's becoming content. And I'll give an example. Like movies used to be considered basically more works than TV, which was just considered, pushing advertising, promoting other shows, leading to spin-offs and stuff. But now with sequelitis going on in movies, or movies that are just exist to cash in on a property. So now what movie studios do is they just look for a property. What's an old 80s, 90s, 2000s property that we can tap into for nostalgia? Transformers? Okay, let's make a dozen Transformers movie. The Marvel movies, are just basically each Marvel movie doesn't really exist anymore, if it ever did, to just be a nice standalone experience. Each one sets up 5 other things, or cross promotes a bunch of other things. Like it promotes toys, it promotes the comic, it promotes the TV spinoff, it promotes Disney Plus. So yeah, everything now is content. TV has been trying to move more in the direction of being works with like smaller seasons, prestige TV, 7-episode seasons of shows, 12 episodes. Like you have things like Breaking Bad, where even though it's like 5 seasons long, they kind of try to make it feel like a novel, and with a beginning and an end and a clear arc. But even that, at the end of the day, is still is still content. But everything is getting, hey Deed, how's it going? Hey Hansi, I sound info. But like the line is getting blurred. It's hard to tell what is content and what is a work. There's a lot of works that are disguised as content, but even more common, there is a lot of content disguised at work as works. So for example, if you look at books like old civil rights books like um Where Do We Go From Here by Martin Luther King, I think that's what it's called, or Letters from a Birmingham jail. Yeah, Where Do We Go From Here? Chaos or Community by Martin Luther King. Um, the Autobiography of Malcolm X, Kwame Ture, Black Power, H. Rap Brown, Die N Word Die, and things like that. These are like works. They were not just churned out. Um, they don't exist to promote any other thing. Like they don't promote a TV appearance. They don't promote a social media feed. They're not there to just kind of cash in on the personality. Like they have an actual well thought out goal. They have a beginning and end. Like they're not just collections of essays or things like that. They have ideas that are meant to be debated and be a blueprint to future generations, you know? But things like DeRay's new book, and all these blue check activists and media pundits and that whole class, everything that they do, that's basically content. Like it's there to keep the person's profile up, to keep their I don't think people talk about Q ratings anymore, but um whatever their clout, it's to keep their clout going on there, keep their name out there. um they're there to help cross promote the their podcast. They're there to promote their Twitter account. They're and they're not really there to be a fulfilling, thought-provoking experience. They're just like long form tweets. um so like these books, everybody already forgets about all of them. Like I think 2 out of 3 of the Black Lives Matter people did memoirs, and the third one, Alicia Garza, just dropped hers. But like no one's going to be going back to them in 5, 10, 20 years. I don't think 5, 10, 20 months, and be studying the ideas in them. They're just very superficial and shallow. And with content, everything is kind of weighted equally. And this is going to tie into Obama. I know it sounds like I'm talking on a tangent, but bear with me. Okay, so I'm gonna give you an example. Watchmen and Lovecraft Country, right? The original Watchmen, the book, everything you need to enjoy the book is in 12 issues. You don't have to go to a tie-in comic book. You don't have to watch a TV show. There's no web page to go to. There's not like a bunch of ancillary material. Anything that would kind of be side material, like, you know, the pirate comic, the excerpts from the newspapers and all that stuff, it's kept within the work. You don't need anything outside of those 12 issues that were the original Watchmen to enjoy anything about the book or to get it. It's a self-contained work. That's one aspect of a work, that it's self-contained. And it's not really promoting anything else to read alongside it or to read after it. You don't need anything before it to read. It's not selling toys or anything. Watchmen, the HBO show, a lot of stuff doesn't make sense. And you have to go to these websites, and they have a whole bunch of websites that you have to go to. And those websites actually give you a whole bunch of the backstory. So you go to the website, it's like a giant Easter egg hunt. Then you have to go to all these think pieces, and there's a bunch of think pieces of people who have read all the clues, gone to the websites. And Damon Lindelof's old show was like this, Lost. There was a whole bunch of extra reading and supplementary material that you could go through to enjoy it. And a lot of those clues ended up meaning nothing. And that's one of the reasons people got so mad, because it just felt like we went on all these Easter egg hunts and all this deep stuff, and none of it meant crap. Now, real artists or real heroes are people who create works. Celebrities, and to an even greater extent, influencers, create content. It's just shoveling shit. That's what they do. And Obama's book and his whole MO is pure content, and he's very much an influencer. But he wants to disguise it as a work, and he wants to disguise himself as a hero. He wants to be remembered as a hero. He doesn't want to be seen as an influencer. So even though it's really what he is, he's a celebrity and he's an influencer. Like, people who think Trump is the first reality show president or the first influencer president are wrong. It's Obama. Obama just had a different decorum about him and a different way of being respectable. But at the end of the day, all those rappers and celebrities that were in his White House, I mean, he was just stunt after stunt after stunt. He was more interested in campaigning consistently for 8 years and treating his whole run as a campaign rather than governing and being a leader. No, I didn't say he was the first celeb. I said the first reality show president. Reagan is arguably the first celebrity president, but the argument was who was the first reality show president, because influencers are a degraded form of celebrity. Influencers are like what a celebrity is to a hero, an influencer is to a celebrity. If a celebrity is a degraded form of heroism, then an influencer is a degraded form of a celebrity. And for Ronald Reagan's faults, he was a genuine celebrity. But I think Obama and Trump are more influencers. That being a celebrity isn't that great either. It's just better than being just a straight up influencer. But yeah, so everything is just content. And I think that's what Obama's book is going to be. I think it's going to be someone said JFK was the first celebrity president. It's kind of arguable in that you're kind of right, but I feel like he did start off as a real politician and he did govern while he was there, but I think mainly through his wife, he kind of became a celebrity afterward, but I don't think he was a celebrity first, then used a celebrity to win. Although being photogenic, they say, definitely did help him in a televised debate, So it's arguable. You could say JFK was the first celebrity president. I'm not going to totally disagree with it. I think there's something to that. But as far as being like a full-fledged celebrity first and then primarily running and on all that, I think Ronald Reagan was arguably the first one. And again, I say arguably because I'm not married to the idea. I don't really care about going to the mattresses about it. I can see multiple points on it. But yeah, Obama. Hey Jinx, how's it going? Obama is, and I'm gonna give you an example, right, of what I'm talking about with Obama. Like, one thing with content is always kind of cross-pollinating and cross-promoting different products in the same medium or similar products in different mediums. And to give an example, Obama releases this. Music has always been an important role in my life. And that was especially true during my presidency. In honor of my book hitting shelves tomorrow, I put together this playlist featuring some memorable songs from my administration. Hope you enjoy it. And the songs are predictably banal and horrible, but why is there a soundtrack to your why is there a soundtrack to your memoir? Like, it just seems weirdly trivial, and um one thing with content one thing with content versus a work, right? um Content tends to be created by celebrities and influencers, where works tend to be created by heroes and artists, like I said before. But another aspect of content is that it is more about elevating the personality and the standing of the person who created it, whereas the work elevates itself. The actual creator kind of becomes secondary to the work. So, to give an example, the Democratic Party, when Obama was done with the Democratic Party was worse off than it was before. Like, it was, I mean, he couldn't transfer any of his um goodwill gained by his influentialness and his celebrity slash influencer status onto Hillary or anyone else. They lost a whole bunch of races on the lower level, and they've been losing races on the lower level since. And everything he tried to do to get people to follow him hasn't worked. He went and said, "Hey, black people, if you don't vote for Hillary, um, then I'll consider it an insult to my legacy." And then black people didn't care; they didn't vote for her. Like, one of the reasons why I think he waited so long to endorse anybody is because he was kind of realizing his standing as an influencer and a leader was in danger if he made a bad call again. Like, he didn't want to back up anybody unless they were guaranteed or had a very good shot to take the Democratic title. And after South Carolina, he finally endorsed Biden, but he did a lot of machinations in the background and helped get people to drop out and put their stuff behind Biden, because if he kept making asks of the people and not delivering, it was going to hurt his desired image as a hero or a leader or even as a celebrity or an influencer, and by luck and with COVID, he got lucky. Because if it wasn't for COVID, I think Biden would have lost still. And yeah, I totally agree with this. Um, yeah, he's like a bizarre Obama. It's opposite side of the coin, but they're still both on the same coin. Yeah. So, and then the other part is, this is another aspect of content versus a work. And a big part of a content versus a work, content has a lot of what I call borrowed emotional response, um, where a lot of it comes from associations with something else because it's kind of empty. So it has a lot of Easter eggs, a lot of um, nostalgic references, or things that make you think of something else. And by seeing it, you transfer that emotion to, yeah, and there's nothing but content. It only pops up when you have something to sell, right? But yeah, and content is very much about branding and the person. So if you look at Obama's playlist here, this is about shaping your view of him. I mean, it's not a great playlist. It's very banal, but I think to him and to the crowd he likes, he thinks this is a but it's so focus group tested and bland and boring. It's like basically taking an averaging of your average best albums of all time list and for normies and just putting it together, right? But he's very, very worried about his legacy, and I'll tell you why. Because without works, it's hard to be long-term famous. It's hard to have long-term standing. And if you want to prove it to yourself, I'm someone who likes old movies. I watch Turner Classic Movies and Criterion all the time. And something that's very interesting, if you look at a lot of old movies, you look at a lot of old TV shows, or even in your lifetime, think about people who were famous 10, 20 years ago. A lot of celebrities who are very, very huge in their day, a lot of people don't know who they are these days. As recently as 10, 20 years ago, but they will have been in their tabloids like crazy. And if you watch a lot of Turner Classic Movies, a lot of Criterion, and a lot of old TV shows, you'll see people who were in a lot of movies. And you'll even see, if you read about them, you'll find out this person was huge in the day. Like Humphrey Bogart was not that popular in the beginning. In the first part of his career, I used to watch a lot of Humphrey Bogart movies and read his biographies. And people think of him as like, A-list Hollywood icon. He was a late bloomer in acting. He was only getting roles as the second or third billed guy or the heavy. He was always dying in his movies. And he was always behind people like this guy called George Raft and some other people. Paul Mooney was another one. There were all these people that were actually bigger than Humphrey Bogart. And what happened to Humphrey Bogart that got him really lucky was there were some key roles that some of those big guys messed up and didn't take. And Humphrey Bogart got those roles as an afterthought. But what happened to Humphrey Bogart is a lot of those roles he got, things like The Big Sleep, Casablanca, Treasure of Sierra Madre, those ended up being huge works. As in, to this day, people remember Casablanca. Casablanca is as famous or more famous than Humphrey Bogart. A lot of works stand the test of time better than celebrities or influencers do. Content can't even last in people's minds for like a month or 2 months. So content, you cannot create legacy. No matter how famous you are in the moment, thanks to content, content only keeps you famous as long as you're generating new content. If you're not constantly generating new content, your fame dissipates. That's why people who are influencers or celebrities, they're only as good as what they did the past year. Like they fall off or they don't do anything in a year. Like if you're attached to an iconic work, you can disappear. Like someone like J.D. Salinger, that guy did Catcher in the Rye, and he was a recluse for the rest of his life, and people kept looking for him. But if you're someone who just did a brainless string of bestsellers that were hot in the time, you might have been big shit at the time of the bestsellers, but 10 years later, like, a lot of people don't remember the person who wrote Peyton Place. Those things sold a lot of books, but they were basically melodrama. Yeah, I think George Raft was one, and George Raft, he's kind of famous, but he's not as famous as Humphrey Bogart, because George Raft, his works didn't stand as much. And the same thing goes for politicians. Like there's a lot of presidents and politicians who had high approval ratings in their day, but people don't really mess with him that much. But someone like FDR, his great work was the New Deal. And the mythology of him being the president during World War II as well, like those different things. People, Lyndon Johnson, The Great Society, no matter what you think about him, like he left behind that work. Yeah, To Kill a Mockingbird Lady, that's someone else. That being attached to like one work will keep you, it may not make you rich. There's a lot of people who are iconic because they made works and they never got rich in their lifetime. Like Karl Marx died poor, but the Communist Manifesto and Capital are works. They're not content. They're like there's not that many works out there of that standing. You have like the theory of evolution. You have Charles Darwin and his books on evolution, the Bible, Karl Marx, like the and maybe Mein Kampf. Those are probably like the only 4 books that someone could say really changed the world. And for Bible, let's say all the holy books, Old Testament, New Testament, Quran. But yeah, there's only a handful of books that someone could say really changed the path of the world. And a lot of people who do them don't really die rich, and they don't have to do that much to stay famous. But works will make you famous. And the closest thing Obama has to work as a president is Obamacare, and I think that's kind of a mixed bag. Whether you think it's his fault or not that Obamacare was not great, so I think Obama's searching for a work because he didn't really govern. He just did a lot of stunts. He did a lot of publicity stunts. He kind of ran it as always, keeping his popularity high and eternal campaigning. You know, yeah. Uncle Tom's Cabin is another one that someone could say. Yeah, My Brother's Keeper. I think he wanted to make that at work, but it ended up falling flat because a lot of people took it as being misogynoir. So that ended up not working out. But so this Promised Land, an example of the borrowed emotional response is, Promised Land is what Promised Land did he deliver anybody to? What Promised Land was he aiming for? He's not part of that civil rights tradition. He grew up as basically a white. Yvette Carnell said that a lot of people thought, including herself, that Obama was a black man with a white mother, and she said later on she realized he was a white man with a black father. And this is not to gatekeep anyone's blackness, but he was raised in a white family. He met his father like twice. He was not really raised black, and he was raised not on the mainland, and he came from an African background that he didn't even get in touch with until he was an adult. If you read his book, I read his first memoir. Now, why is he putting a Promised Land as the title? Right? Yeah, Settlers Book Club is still on tonight. Yeah, he went to the preppiest prep school, like yeah, so why is he putting a Promised Land? I mean, I'm not saying he can't get into the tradition later by doing a lot of um works in that tradition, but what works did he do that gives him the right to say a Promised Land? But that's what I mean by borrowed emotional response. And to go back to like Watchmen and Lovecraft Country, right? Like Watchmen uses things like Black Wall Street, and when you watch it, and you feel like really messed up watching it, but that messed up feeling you have is from what you already think about America's real legacy with racism, and seeing something that was true being reenacted in the screen. And you get kind of angry. You get kind of angry about that, seeing it secondhand. It reminds you of how messed up this country was. But if you look at what it actually has to say about Black Wall Street, it doesn't really have anything to say about it. It doesn't have anything to say about racism other than racism existed. The character that survived Black Wall Street is pretty two-dimensional, handled horribly. Like the racial messaging of that character when he becomes an adult, Hooded Justice, is very weird and bizarre and stereotypical and trope filled and whatever. Like it doesn't really have anything to say about anything. Whereas the original Watchmen doesn't have borrowed emotional response. Everything that you feel, the book brings to you. The book touches on real life events like Watergate and the the JFK assassination and different things. It references real life, real life events and tragedies, but it doesn't use borrowed emotional response to generate what it wants from the reader. And same thing with Lovecraft Country. They have this girl character named Dee, and because they can't really write, because they're a bunch of influencers, and the show itself is an example of cross-pollination of content, as in the show is not really made to be enjoyed in a vacuum. There's a bunch of homework every show, and they had this group of people doing a syllabus of all this stuff that you should read to learn more about what was mentioned in the show. So they just kind of name drop a lot of historical events and people and put a bunch of Easter eggs. That's the sign of content, like Easter eggs, name dropping, and then they direct you to the official podcast. And a lot of people who are defending the show to me were like, "Oh, you get to listen to the podcast to get the full effect." That's another sign of content. When you have to like keep referring to other things to get the full value or the full meaning, the same way comic books now have event comics, and there's like 2,000 tie-ins to tell the story. And when the event is done, all I did was set up the next comic event. That's an example of content. And then when you actually listen to the stuff, they give you more books and more things to read and whatever. And I call it homework TV. And then the think pieces you're supposed to read those too. And then the tweets fill out part of the story. Love and Hip Hop is the same way. Like Love and Hip Hop. If you watch Love and Hip Hop, a lot of the storylines and details happen on social media. You actually need to kind of keep track of social media and blogs and all this stuff to fully enjoy like Real Housewives of Atlanta or Love and Hip Hop, because they use social media as part of the stunts and the like storylines will happen on those shows that you have to refer to tweets to understand. Like, they'll start an episode of one of these reality shows and says, Candy's mad at Cindy because of what she said on Twitter. And it's like a tie-in. Hey, Justin Charity, how's it going? Yeah, so yeah, exactly. Like Star Wars geeks, you need to read Extended Universe to properly understand. Yeah, so you need a playlist to understand his book. You probably need a bunch of readers' interviews to understand it. His press tour is going to be, he's going to have a speaking tour to promote it, like Michelle Obama did for Becoming. There's going to be a lot of Vox and Slate pieces to talk about it. But one thing that happened in Lovecraft Country too is they had this character D, and because they're like bad writers, they couldn't really create a three-dimensional character. This character D was a big nothing burger. She's just like this empty black girl magic character. But what they did was they start an episode with Emmett Till's funeral, and they play his funeral. They kind of undermine the impact of it because they uses the soundtrack Bananarama Cruel Summer, which is a weird choice. But they showed this big event in Chicago of Emmett Till having the funeral, right? Then, well, yeah, that's part of content. Content, everything is flat. So you're right. Reality TV dipping into messy Twitter drama, it's all the same world. That's what content is. Everything is flattened. The book is as important or a part of the maze as the Twitter drama around the book, as the think pieces that the book was inspired from. Like, I'll give you another example of content, like that new movie that Jeremy O'Harris and that other woman are doing, Zola, and it's based on a Twitter thread. Like, that's what content is. Like, you make a movie based on a Twitter thread, then there's going to be a think piece based on the movie, and then there's going to be a Twitter thread. There's going to be a bunch of Twitter threads around the movie. When in the first episode of the Lovecraft Country podcast, they straight up said that they were making the show for think piece writers and Black Twitter. And they said if they win the think piece writers and Black Twitter, they'll feel their jobs are done. Right? Now, going back to Lovecraft Country, they have this big Emmett Till funeral, and then, but they don't really talk about Emmett Till at all. They don't really build on him. But what they did in the episode before, they had a cameo by Emmett Till. They didn't name him by name, and they established this character D is Emmett Till's best friend. So they used their character D and established her as Emmett Till's best friend, which I think is like a hell of a cheat. Hey PB, what's up? Hey K-Lock, thanks for the super sticker. Much appreciated. Everyone who's enjoying this, feel free to hit the super chat or, hit us up on the Venmo or Cash App. But so then when they have the later episode where Emmett Till dies, and they never explore Emmett Till at all, they use that death to explore the D character. And she's all broken up about Emmett Till, and they use that borrowed emotional response to establish her as a character. They can't really generate anything in the work to actually make you care about her. They don't have those skills as a writer. Kind of like as an opposite, to go back to Alan Moore, or to go back to the movie Soldier Story. If you look at the movie Soldier Story, all original characters, it was rooted in a real historical time and racism, but they didn't have to use borrowed emotional response. By the time you're done watching a Soldier Story, each of those characters is three-dimensional, and you can pick them apart for days, and all the emotions it generates are strictly based on the writer's skill. But D in Lovecraft Country, they just basically took Emmett Till's power and his story and just used it to say, hey, look, this girl's Emmett Till's best friend. Let's talk about how Black girls are affected by racism and trauma and all this stuff. And they also had their own Black Wall Street episode. They did a whole episode rooted on Black Wall Street, because content is trendy as well. Content isn't about timeless ideas. It's about fashionable people and events and topics. So because Lovecraft Country, because Tulsa is now hot and it's trendy and topical, they're going to incorporate Lovecraft Country, right? So that's the world that but none of these are going to be real works. They're all going to be content. And the people, and this is what content does. Content doesn't keep itself alive. It gets forgotten the minute the next piece of content comes out. But the hope is that it elevates the content creator for the moment. And when it's all said and done, the content creator is the biggest beneficiary of content. The book industry doesn't really get helped by the content creator's book. A lot of times, their stuff doesn't really make that much money. If you look at the ratings of Lovecraft Country, or look at the ratings of Watchmen, or if you look at Slave Play and its actual receipts, Slave Play was not profitable. It was a huge flop. It was buried that it was a huge flop. But they all got a lot of buzz. They got a lot of buzz. And nowadays, there's this idea that attention is the next best thing to money, if not better than money, because this is an idea that as long as you can keep generating attention, sooner or later, the attention is going to pay off big. So as long as you keep getting attention and getting more attention. So it's like Slave Play, no one even talks about it anymore. No one really remembers. Like, everyone thought it was very thought-provoking, but once they finished saying that they were going to unpack it, when they were all said and done, there wasn't really much substance to unpack, but everybody knows that guy's name now. He's huge. Damon Lindelof's star has risen. Everyone who wrote on Watchmen won Emmys and awards, and Lovecraft Country generated a lot of buzz. The people involved benefited more than the actual work, but the flip side is those people as long as you don't get attached to a real work, you're going to be forgotten sooner. Even if you'll burn hotter in the short run, but you'll be forgotten in the long run. Whereas the creator of works very often don't shine that hot in the short run. Sometimes the work doesn't even get big until after they die, but they become eternal. And I think Obama's problem is that he wants to have his cake and eat it too. He wants to live his life and career as an influencer and celebrity and generate that white hot right now heat that you get from being a content creator and being an influencer and a celebrity. But he also wants to be remembered as a hero and a leader and have that long-term longevity. So I think he's trying to retroactively make his career into one of works. Yeah, same thing for writers for websites and blogs. That's a great thing too. Um, if you're like a blogger or doing for websites, you're just only as good as your last piece. You have to generate constant content. Yeah, so I think that's kind of Obama's thing. He wants to have both, and a lot of times to be iconic, to be going down as a leader or a part of history, you have to sacrifice a lot of your short-term popularity. You have to sometimes do less work. Like there's very few people. Like I'll give an example. Stevie Wonder was an example of someone who was very prolific. That dude in his peak was doing an album a year or something. And every one of them was a bona fide, standalone, powerful work. But that's rare. Most people who do works of that caliber usually can't churn them out like clockwork. He was very, very much an anomaly. That's one thing that makes him like a true genius. I feel like genius is one of those overused and diluted words, but he was very much a real genius. But yeah, this book that Obama's doing is content, and he's gonna probably end up adapting it into some kind of he has to deal with Netflix. Like content is much all about product and corporate synergy. He's going to take this book and probably make a Netflix show about it. He has a huge development deal with Netflix, so he produces uh, con- content for them. Everything on Netflix is content. Netflix has very few actual works. There's going to be a huge speaking tour built off of it. There's going to probably be a whole bunch of tied in product. I wouldn't be surprised if that dude did product placement in the book. You know, yeah, that's perfect. Jamila Lemieux now dispensing dating advice on Slate. So she was the editor in chief of Black. She was the editor in chief of a Black magazine, Ebony. Then she became a media director for Cynthia Nixon. She's doing politics now. Um, and Cynthia Nixon is kind of like showing herself as a democratic socialist, Then she was an Elizabeth Warren girl. Now she's doing relationship advice. Like that's an influencer. That's a content creator. Yeah. Yeah, this is a great example. A good example is Busta Rhymes' new album. I thought I was tired with hip hop. I thought I was tired with music. And I tried Busta Rhymes' new album, Extinction Level Event 2, and I was as giddy as when I first brought home Tribe Called Quest Midnight Marauders or De La Soul is Dead. I started realizing it's because this is a work. If you listen to Busta's new album, that's very much a work. It's thematically consistent. He hasn't done anything for a while before it. You can tell that he was taking his time with it. He had something to say. He had ideas. That's another thing with content versus works. Works are based on ideas. Content is very much about people and events. And another thing with works ask questions but don't always have the answers. Sometimes they answer questions with questions, but a lot of times they're working out the answers alongside you, or maybe don't even have the answers. Like, um, Watchmen doesn't have a lot of answers. If you look at Watchmen, it has a lot of questions, like who watches the Watchmen, um, who, what happens when all hope is gone? What happens when God walks on earth? What happens to religion? What happens to believing in greater things? Thank you, G Rock, for the donation. Yeah, everything turns into a reference with content. Um, and that's what the reason I'm going through all this is promised land. He can't tie into anything of his own. He has to name his book and his playlist after what the civil rights generation did. Kind of like how Watchmen, the HBO show, lives off of borrowed emotional responses to a real world tragedy like Black Wall Street, or based on borrowed emotional response from the original Watchmen. Like Obama is always trading in civil rights imagery and stuff like that. That has nothing to do with, like, what does he have to do with promised land? That's the, what does he have to do with that tradition? Such that he would name, what does his administration and what it aimed to do and tried to do? I mean, the things that he said about black politics and black people, like, he's not a person to use the word promised land, the term promised land. So yeah, man, that's but yeah, his thing is, I feel like he wants the best of both worlds. He wants to just be an influencer to create. I think there's a lot that you can make about modern day that's good. I think that you can. I think conditions make it hard. Like, for example, you used to be able to be an artist and live in Manhattan and squat in some kind of apartment and work part-time as a bartender or an elevator operator for a couple hours a day and be able to afford that. It'll be a shitty apartment in Manhattan, but you can do rehearsals, organize plays, create a band like the punks did in the 70s. Life is too expensive and cost of living is too high and everything is gentrified. Like, who has the time to sit around and create art? You have to make money. So I think that makes content very incentivized. Like, if people could work a couple hours a night or have a low stress 9 to 5 job and then just create and collaborate for like the rest of the day, and make their rent easy, there'd probably be a lot more works. But I think in addition, like, there's a neoliberal mindset that fuels everything, but there's also a neoliberal reality that traps people into needing needing to just make money all the time. Like, if you're a writer, to be able to sit down and create a work is going to be hard when you have like a $3,000 a month apartment that you're splitting with like 3 or 4 people, and you have to make your rent all the time. Yeah, this is another thing. Why put effort into original art when it seems like people get the same praise for being posers? That's true as well, but it's kind of a vicious cycle, because maybe if enough people were doing art, the people who were getting props for being posers maybe wouldn't get as much. But actually, that wouldn't happen. You know why? Because it's that grifter versus skills dichotomy that I talked about before. Chances are, if you are the kind of person that is good at making art, you probably haven't developed your grifting and politicking skills. So your promotion will be bad. But the people who are good at promotion tend to be content creators. And part of the reason why they're so bad at creating works is because they put all their skills and efforts into constant self-promotion. Right? So it's like, Yeah, that's kind of the problem. You're right. The people who do the shitty work will end up getting all the props and everything because they are really good self promoters. But a guy who does real works and not content is not going to be able to get their name in print and press everywhere the way these guys can. And yeah, what you're talking about is one of the reasons why New York City hip hop fell off for a long time and why there aren't many basketball players coming from the city. Yeah, like New York's too expensive now to produce that kind of stuff. Like that's why the 2000s Williamsburg band scene couldn't produce the kind of works or groups that the punk and new wave scene in New York did in the late 70s, early 80s. They tried to artificially create a scene like a new CBGBs and all that stuff, but most of those bands were content. Like, how many people really replay the Strokes nowadays? No, people don't really replay the Strokes, and they're the closest thing to like a lasting band out of that era. But most of that stuff was pretty forgotten after. And the guy from the Strokes himself is filthy rich. He's from the Casablancas family. His dad is a rich fashion guy. That's why he was able to, create what was one of the closest things to a work in the era. But he was cosplaying as poor and broke. You know, I mean, I think they're probably the best ones out of that era to last. But even then, those guys, like I said, they had the space. Same thing with the La La Land guy. Someone was there was this thing about La La Land and that how that guy was the youngest director to win a Academy Award, and so people are telling me that like something to be impressed about. But his parents, went to the Ivy Leagues, and I think he might have gone to the Ivy Leagues, and they're rich and well connected. Yeah, he's able to make a movie. I mean, he has the connections, the money, the space to make it work. But a lot of people that take student loans to go to film school and whatever, or went to the actor studio, they're gonna have to hustle as a waiter, have an office job during the day, do all. Yeah, I agree. A lot of people thought they were posers at the time and corny and inauthentic. I was one of them. I wasn't that crazy about them, but I'll admit some of the songs were catchy. But I do think they were able to thrive because they had money and they were rich and they were connected. Um, yeah, 50's trolling was a work. His trolling became more of a work than his actual albums. Like after Get Rich or Die Trying, the rest of his albums were just content. They were pure content, and his art became trolling. Like Musician was his decoy career. Um, but yeah, I mean, so same thing with Obama. His family was well off. He wasn't poor. He didn't have the traditional black experience, and he was able to have a lot of space to find himself and reinvent himself that a lot of black people aren't afforded, you know? And but what I want to say about his book, this is my theory on his book and the part that everyone is talking about the most about using the book to get laid. There's a lot of different people, like there's some feminists saying, "Oh man, Obama's such a creep. What kind of guy is this?" And they're taking this stuff way too literally. And this is what I want to tell you the takeaway you should take from Obama's thing is he had to sell out a lot of things and have no core beliefs to be a full-fledged influencer, because that's an important part of being an influencer is to be malleable, because you have to keep riding waves. You have to be into different things. And if your beliefs are too firm and you have too many core values, you're going to be limited in how flexible you can be. You're going to have a lot of problems when it comes to that stuff. So, like, for example, with our friend Professor Crunk, throughout this whole campaign, she has been just jumping from stance to stance, not really standing for anything, and it's been pretty shameless how she's been doing it. But the way she's been doing it is nuts, and I'll show you an example. I think I've shown this before. Um, but hold on, I had this ready, but okay. So right here, she does this. Yeah, Obama is a Obama. Sorry, I said Obama. Check this out. I hope you can see it. I know sometimes the resolution doesn't come clear, but let's try. So she says this, catching up on the debate part 2 now. Many thoughts, but Biden wouldn't even agree that his lack of support for federal enforcement of busing was wrong decades ago. Even seeing that a potential casualty of it might have been um, no Kamala on stage. This man can't be president. That's July 2019. June 2020, 11 months later, the most tone deaf thing Biden could do right now is pick a former cop or former prosecutor for VP. That disqualifies Klobuchar for sure and doesn't look good for Demings or Harris either. So she's shitting on Biden, then she's shitting on Harris. She's stuck with Biden now, so now she stopped shitting on Biden. You notice that, but she still shits on Biden. Biden picks Harris. And this happens 2 months later. Biden Harris 2020. So she was against Joe Biden. Joe Biden got the nomination. She's for Joe Biden, but she bashes Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris gets the vice presidential nod. 2 months later, Biden Harris 2020. And then she has been the biggest booster for Biden and Harris since. And people kept pulling up the receipts on her. They're like, lady, what do you believe? You were all over the place. But that's what that's not hero behavior. That's not leader behavior. That's a content creator. That's an influencer. That's a celebrity. It's like the difference between fashion and style. Fashion is content. Fashion is what is the latest thing that is trendy. What are people buying? People will just buy things that are fashionable, whether it fits how they look, whether the things fit with each other. Style is timeless. Style, people with style become icons and they get named after their style. Like, whereas people with fashion, they don't really get remembered. They just are known for spending money on whatever is popular that everyone else has, and that's expensive. And they just care about the brand showing. And someone who's fashionable never really gets remembered as like a style icon. Style is the work. Fashion is the content. Anybody can follow fashion. Very few people can create a style. Like, if you know somebody with really good style, they can get some crappy clothes from H&M and Zara and a bunch of places and slap it together and make it look dope. And somebody who's just somebody into fashion, they will get a bunch of Supreme stuff and a bunch of limited edition Jordans and just look garish. They'll look horrible. And the kind of person that person will attract will just be another bunch of brainless chicken heads, but the kind of person circle that the person with style will they attract a different kind of person, but the work versus content, the hero and leader versus celebrity and influencer, you'll see all these things. If you know to look for them, you'll see them. Thanks, Ezekiel Castleton. I didn't expect this to be so insightful. Works versus content. Yeah, thank you. Share this with people too, because we're gonna get a little deeper. So if you're enjoying it, we have a little bit further to go. So yeah, feel free to share it, and also feel free to hit that super chat or support us because it all goes back into the show. We're not tricking off your money on um, anything disreputable. We just put it right back into the show. And yeah, everything T has been saying about influencer culture and how it's infected politics keeps getting proven right. Yeah, right now Joe Biden is crowdfunding the next step of his administration. You see, he had a GoFundMe. Like it's content culture is everything now, and I don't even like that word content. Like but I think goes even for Champagne Sharks. Even like what I do, if at some point I don't create a work, then this will all be forgotten. Works are what make you immortal. Everybody who wants to be immortal at some point has to create a work. Like and a lot of times people who create content, they will make books. Like Amanda Seals made a book, D Ray made a book, the Black Lives Matter girls made a book. The guy from BuzzFeed, Saeed Jones, he made a book, but those books are interchangeable with their tweets, with their articles, with their viral videos. It's all part of PR and stunts. So it all flattens. It all becomes the same. They become what I call decoy works. Decoy works are, oh, I missed this. I'm curious about what it is. That should be funny. But yeah, decoy works are something that you pretend is a work, but it's not that different than your tweet. None of this stuff is going to, yeah, a lot of people don't even know that she made a book. And I don't think a lot of this stuff sells. I think people just hope that their these people's built-in base will get a certain amount of attention and baseline sales from the book for the book, but I'm not sure how often that happens. But yeah, anyway, um to go back to Obama, I want to find that thing with his getting laid. Obama is trying to sell himself as this, and I think a lot of people took it too literally. I think he's a very unreliable narrator, but I want to show what he got into. I love how you say made and not wrote a book. Yep. Um, this is what he wrote. Looking back, it's embarrassing to recognize the degree to which my intellectual curiosity, those first 2 years of college, paralleled the interest of various women I was attempting to get to know. Marx and Marcuse, so I had something to say to the long-legged socialists who lived in my dorm. Fanon and Gwendolyn Brooks for the smooth-skinned sociology major who never gave me a second look. Foucault and Woolf for the ethereal bisexual who wore mostly black. As a strategy for picking up girls, my pseudo-intellectualism proved mostly worthless. I found myself in a series of affectionate but chaste friendships. Now, hey Vita, how's it going? Yeah, I totally think they do. I think one thing about being a content creator, you have to keep multiple streams of income. You can't just count on anything. And you have to find multiple ways to keep your name out there as much as you can. That's part of the beast. You have to feed the content beast, and it's a hungry beast. You have to generate a lot of content. It's one of my problems with running this podcast and everything is that I've come to realize that, like, if I do a bunch of really insightful podcasts, some of them alone that I think are very thought provoking, but I don't release them every week, I was losing a lot of people. People wanted something every single week. And I started realizing I'm better off just doing something every week and just hope some of it's super insightful and just keep my name out there. It's like you're kind of forced to kind of play that game. Because another thing that people like now is parasocialness. Like people sell personality now. The point of content is not the content itself. The point of content is to sell the personality, and the personality is sold so that people can generate parasocial relationships. So, for example, the point of slave play is not to make slave play as iconic as like a Soldier Story. Very few people know the name of the guy who wrote Soldier Story. People remember the work better than they remember him, and people love talking about Soldier Story. More people talk about Jeremy or Harris than talk about slave play. Even like days after slave play, everybody was tweeting processing, unpacking, processing, unpacking. When I follow up with people, okay, you processed and unpacked. What did you take away from it? What questions? What deep questions? And it was all banal, anti-racism 101 type stuff. But he's bigger than ever. He's signing more deals. And Lil Nas X is an example. Lil Nas X has made 2 whole songs in how many years? And it's only 1.5 hits. He's more making news for tweeting himself in a Nicki Minaj costume and just tweeting in general. His music career is a decoy job. That's why I give you an example. Lil Nas X did one song, right? And if you remember his song, Old Town Road, does anyone remember how many remixes he had to that? He had to literally 20 remixes. That's a content guy. He just creates. I'm going to show you an example. He did that one song, and he was a tweet decker and a viral tweeter before. He was something called Nas Mirage, and then he decided to rebrand and make this music. He did one song, and it was basically a TikTok song. He turned it to a hit. He did a lot of publicity stunts when the country music people didn't want to put him on as a country song. He parlayed that into more publicity, and after that one song, he announced he's taking a break from music, canceling 2 shows because he wasn't really serious about doing music. And when he started when people started expecting to act like a musician and actually tour to promote the music, he kind of lost interest. He's like, so he already retired after effectively after one song. He just wanted to just generate content. He was more into doing 20 remixes and getting a different publicity stunt celebrity every single time. Yeah. So, I mean, I don't think he has an album. I don't think he ever made an album. I think every now and then he just tries to recapture the virality. As a song, Old Town Road has more in common with a viral tweet than it does with great songs of old. I don't really see people playing Old Town Road at parties and clubs 5-10 years from now. It's a viral tweet. It's a TikTok tweet. It's very kind of forgotten. Yeah, he never dropped an official album. He couldn't tour because he was only doing enough, because it's a decoy career. He was only doing just enough to lend plausibility to the decoy career. That's what these people are like with being authors, being political pundits, being freelance writers, being TV personalities, being screenwriters. These people that jump from hustle to hustle to create the content. They don't really care about the actual works themselves because the end goal is self-promoting their name. If the work ends up being more known than them, then they've kind of failed in their mind. But anyway, going back to your friend and mine, Obama, this is the quote in question. They got to a lot of grief. It says, looking back, it's embarrassing. Actually, I think I read the whole thing. But what I want to say about this is what I think he's doing with this. He is constantly afraid of losing his popularity, and a lot of people have been turning on him, except for like the diehard shit libs, like the people who just don't care. But he has them in his back pocket. He can do anything, and those people won't leave. They're just brainless. The brainless brunch libs. The brunch libs are, they don't care. They're going to support Team Democrat, Team Blue, Team Obama. That's my president. That crowd. But he's lost a lot of goodwill from people. And if you read his first book, I read Dreams from My Father. He wrote it decades ago. And in it, he's got Jeremiah Wright speeches. He's got talk about the things that he read. And in it, he reads a lot of radical stuff, Fanon and all these different things. And he cites Jeremiah Wright speeches, and they're pretty hardcore. You know, for all this talk about, I didn't know what Jeremiah Wright was about. In his book, he has passages with Jeremiah Wright's fiery speeches. You know, it's not as far as goddamn America and whatever, but it's pretty fiery rhetoric. And that's kind of haunted him in two ways. One is, despite how banal and centrist and neoliberal he governed, the right wingers to this day, and they use a lot of stuff from his book to support this, they try to paint him as a fifth column Manchurian candidate type sleeper agent, communist, Black Panther radical. And to this day, they still love using passages from Dreams from My Father, even though he didn't govern anything like that, and he didn't, stay true to any of that. There's a certain extent to which people still view him on that side as that. People like right of center. But the other thing is, on the flip side of that, a lot of leftists and radicals who actually like those parts of the book, now they think that he sold out. And even like a lot of liberals who aren't brain dead centrists kind of feel like, what was all this talk in your book about all this stuff? And now you just windsurf with Richard Branson and make Netflix shows guy, and do publicity stunts and do reading lists and playlists like Oprah, like who is this influencer? And the best way to kill two birds with one stone is to say that he didn't really believe that stuff. I think that's his way of kind of addressing what's in Dreams from My Father and what his intellectual pedigree seemed to be from that. Now he can say, he could tell the right wingers, he can undercut that by saying, hey, look, I was just doing it to get girls, jokes on you. Then he could say to like the people on the left who criticize him as being a sellout, he could say, hey, I didn't give up core principles. Yeah, I did read all that stuff, like I said, but it was just a harmless, funny story, of a nerdy, it's a fake self-deprecating story. To him, I think he thinks that's the lesser of three evils. If he had to choose between being a nerdy, misguided kid who got friend zoned a lot, but was ultimately not ill-meaning, and whatever. Like notice, like if he said, yeah, I used all this stuff and I was crushing it. I was using the Foucault and Marx and all this stuff, and I was banging the leggy bisexual goth, and I was banging the Black Power girl. That would be unsympathetic. This, to him, I think, is the most, in his mind, it might be miscalculation because a lot of people still didn't like it, but to kill two birds with one stone, to the right wingers, he says it's not true, that he just did it to get girls, so he is not this secret communist or whatever. So whenever you pull up anything showing him interested in Marx and Foucault and critical race theory, any of that, now he has this built-in excuse to people on the left or Democrats. They could say, hey, judge me as a centrist. That's really all I ever was. That stuff was just the harmless stuff of a young guy who was misguided, but also to not alienate like those same leftists and feminists. He goes, but it didn't work anyway. It wasn't like I was getting laid off of it. It if anything, it's just kind of pathetic. It's self-deprecating. It's kind of like a false humility. So I think that's what he's doing with that. And I think a lot of people were kind of too stuck on taking it literally. A lot of people were like, Obama, what kind of feminist are you? Or what kind of person does this? Like, this is myth making. He's not a reliable narrator. This is a guy who I think his legacy is done and his legacy is becoming undone. His legacy is being rewritten and unraveled right before his eyes. Whereas people are talking about drone strikes all day long. A lot of people are talking about how he didn't do anything for Black people. If you read a lot of excerpts from his books, from this new book, I haven't read the whole thing, but a lot of it's very defensive, and it seems like a response to the latest discourse around him. That's another reason why I'm saying it's very much like content. It feels like responding to a bunch of tweets at once or responding to a bunch of think pieces at once. It's very reactionary to me, the book. It's very much about trying to do damage control on all the talking points that he's getting slammed on. So yeah, that's what I think that passage is about. It's at the end of the day, it's not really about the ideas in the book or the story about his presidency. It's tweaking his persona while also it's tweaking his persona to keep, because like I said, he's trying to play two games at once. He wants to keep his celebrity / influencer profile, and he also, which is keep his modern rock star celebrity status enhanced, and also lay the seeds for a decoy work, something that he's hoping will help him regain some control of the narrative of his presidency. He doesn't want his presidency to get remembered as an influencer presidency by a guy who basically was a glorified conservative, which is where it's heading. So yeah. I mean, I'm sure with some crowd it always was. I mean, even nowadays, depending on what crowd you run with, I mean, somebody said, why doesn't the race of Kamala's husband, Chris? How's it going, Chris? Yeah, I mean, I think it's just the hypocrisy that you get. Yeah, I mean, that's a whole different show. But yeah, you're right. Yeah. So anyway, the other thing I wanted to talk about, real quick was why is Giuliani so bad with his presidency? And I think what's interesting with Giuliani and the president, the thing with Giuliani and the presidency, right, is Giuliani, the kind of lawyer he was. If you look at it, Giuliani's actual legal career, he mostly worked as prosecutors or chiefs of staff for government. And what happened with that is he wasn't doing a lot of trial and legal work that didn't involve him being on the side of the government. Now, one thing about that kind of work, especially if you look into the RICO statute, and there's stuff you can read about this. If you look into the RICO statute and how a lot of that stuff works, it's similar to what it's like to be a police detective nowadays. Like back in the days, to be a police detective or any type of detective, people think of Sherlock Holmes and stuff. Technology was so limited, and the powers of what they had to do was so limited that there's this old school romantic idea of what detective work is. But to give you an example, if you go now and watch something like Investigation Discovery on cable, an ID, and just watch how all those cases get solved. Civil liberties and all that stuff has been so eroded and it's been so taken for granted what the government and authorities can do. A lot of times it's just a matter of the cops just suspect everyone close to the person and then they just get search warrants. They'll go and um, check your phone records. They'll check the cell phone towers to see where your phone calls were bouncing off of when you made phone calls and if it was close to where the body was found. They'll check your easy pass. They cultivate a bunch of snitches that they motivate in a bunch of unethical ways. Sometimes the snitches are incentivized like to lie even. um Warrants, improperly gained evidence, but also like what they can properly gain is off the chains. Once you do the search thing, then they're allowed to go into any computer stuff that they find of yours and check your search engine history. They can have a computer forensic guy pull up even stuff you deleted off your computer and all the search history that you got rid of. They can find all that stuff, the stuff that you think you can just take out. So now to be a police detective, you just basically have to just be an asshole who's willing to aggressively use every single piece of power the state has behind you. But if someone gave you the power to just invade every aspect of someone's privacy and use all the technology available to snoop, you'd be a great detective too, right? That's what prosecuting as an attorney, as what Giuliani was doing. RICO is the most civil liberties abusing statute you can imagine. Like what they did to get Al Capone, they had to be a creative and come up with this tax stuff. RICO just basically hands you the case. So like all Giuliani had to do was just be aggressive. He just had to be aggressive and just attack, and use the powers. And even a lot of the people who were behind Giuliani even said they think he was too aggressive. But now he doesn't have that machine behind him, and it's very different. It's very different now. But I'm gonna give you a couple of things to read if you want to know more about this. And he didn't really have good people, and I'm gonna show you what I mean. This is why his attempt to kind of steal the election is not working. And this article is pretty good. It's in foreignpolicy.com. It's why Trump's election challenges are nothing like Bush versus Gore. Bush assembled a high-powered legal team. Trump is relying mostly on cronies. And Giuliani's experience, besides being rusty, Giuliani's experience is not really this. Even when he worked for a law firm, he was working as the chief of staff for a politician that he worked under as a prosecutor. That politician went back to private practice and he brought Giuliani along with him at the firm to be chief of staff. So he wasn't doing a bunch of novel legal strategies or anything clever, like what Bush's guys did with the hanging Chad thing and all that. Like most of his prosecution was just being a bully and using the RICO statute. So look at this story. The people that Bush's legal team had included, he had this guy, James Baker, who was the architect of Bush's legal strategy. And James Baker is a very notable litigator. Bush's legal team included 3 future Supreme Court justices, John Roberts, Brett Kavanaugh, and Amy Coney Barrett. 3 of the people who helped Bush steal that ended up on the Supreme Court, as well as Ted Cruz, now a U.S. Senator, and John Bolton, Trump's former national security advisor. So these people were all active lawyers at the time, and they were people who had varying degrees of experience with litigation or whatever. Trump has struggled to attract such an all-star cast, so he's basically leaned on Rudy Giuliani and some personal lawyers like Jay Sekulow and Pam Bondi and Sidney Powell, and some of the stuff that they were doing was really bad. Like when they went to court, it was embarrassing. If you read some of the transcripts that they've been doing, but yeah, a lot of people don't realize. A lot of people, yeah, Wayne Barrett, his writing on. I never read the book, but I read his articles. I think it was in the Village Voice about Trump and Giuliani. Wayne Barrett used to write about Giuliani a lot, I think, for the Village Voice, and he would talk about how there's so much myth behind him, especially 9/11. Like very overrated how he handled 9/11, but it was very. There's a lot of myth about him as a lawyer and as a politician, but most of what he's done is just straight up bullying and abusing power. And right now, he can't do that. He can't just bully a case into the Supreme Court and with no legal basis, which is what they're trying to do. They're just trying to get by with a legal basis. And he doesn't have that machine behind him anymore that he used to have whenever he was prosecuting the mafia and stuff like that. I'm gonna show you guys something else. It's a pretty good article that shows. Well, if you want to read about the RICO statute, the Independent Review 2004 had this good article. It's called "Law is a Weapon: How RICO Subverts Liberty and the True Purpose of Law," and it talks all about how RICO was just a giant, like the same way people talk about the Patriot Act and stuff, and how the Patriot Act is such a violation of all this stuff. The RICO, it gets a pass because it's used to take out the mob, and people agree with its end goals, but it's very disturbing for the implications of civil liberties. But it's also the best way to take down the mob, so people let it pass. But a lot of legal scholars talk about how bad it is, and in the past 3 decades, uh, much of the growth of federal criminal procedures has been tied to the expanded use of RICO, the Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act of 1970. RICO has succeeded in blurring the lines between state and federal law enforcement and in overturning the protections inherent in the due process guarantees of the Constitution. In the past 3 decades, a veritable revolution has occurred in U.S. criminal law. It has taken place for the most part at the federal level, where the number of crimes with which individuals can be charged has grown rapidly. Once there were only 3 named federal criminal acts: treason, piracy, and counterfeiting. Now there are thousands of federal laws and regulations, and the violation of any of them, no matter how unintentional and harmless the transgression, can lead to years of imprisonment for the convicted person. So this article also talks about Giuliani. So it talks about his career and how Giuliani was able to use RICO as a springboard to become mayor, but ultimately it's a very effed up way to prosecute, even if people agree with the results of it as far as getting certain people off the street. And the whole article goes into all the abuses of civil liberties that RICO allows. So yeah, I mean that's basically it. Also, if you just want to read more about Giuliani's career in general, there's an article in The Nation called, it's from 2002, like "The Fool Rudy, the Man, the Mayor, the Myth," and it goes into a lot of his career as well. I would definitely recommend that. But yeah, he's a piece of work. But yeah, I mean, I'm glad that he stayed in the game long enough to end up in embarrassment. I'm glad that um So if people are asking how did he turn out so terrible, he was always terrible. He just benefited from staying in the spotlight long enough to be exposed, you know? So yeah, I'm loving the Giuliani that we're seeing now and the embarrassment behind it. I think it's great to see. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Haven't been looking at the hey Ole, how's it going? Let me just read the comments real quick. Um Bush acted a goofball, but it was all an act. Whether he really was a goofball or not, I mean, he was willing to defer to smart people. So, I'll give him that. The problem with Trump is he values loyalty over intelligence. Oh, hey, Avril. Thanks. Much love. Thank you, Avril, for a donation. Yeah, so Bush will fire you even if you're right. Sorry, Trump will fire you even if you're right, just on the basis of not saying what he wants to hear. Whereas Bush won't do that to his credit. Yeah, Bush will. Yeah, yeah. So everyone who told Trump good advice, even if it wasn't what he wanted to hear, he fired them and kept the craven people who will tell him what he wants to hear, even if it's not right or tenable. So yeah, I mean that's basically that. I'm just trying to read if any good comments to point out or talk to. Yeah, whether he was dumb or not dumb, I think is not the point. Smart person who can't take good advice is going to be more ineffectual than a dumb person that takes all the good advice around him. Whether or not the actual individual is dumb or smart is not as because no one can do anything alone, smart or dumb. You need a team, and you need a team of smart people, and you have to be able to humble yourself and listen to them. And Bush, whether he really is smart or dumb, was at least willing to listen to people smarter than him. And Trump does not. Yeah, Hillary Clinton's team is also a sycophant. If you read like the book Shattered and also other things, Hillary Clinton was another person who valued loyalty. She just valued credential loyalty, and it burned her as well. So yeah, that's it. If anybody wants to hit us up on Venmo or Cash App or leave a super chat on the way out, feel free. I hope this was valuable to you. Email us at champagnesharks@gmail.com too if you have any ideas or suggestions for the show. For patrons, check out the book club tonight. Tomorrow night is movie night. We're going to be watching Monk the Amerique. It's My Uncle the American in English. It's a French movie that you can find in Criterion. We're going to stream it and talk about it. So definitely check that out. And I don't even know what this is. I have to look that up. What is a parlor page? I'm very boomerish when it comes to certain things. Like you'd be surprised how much cool stuff. I don't know. I don't know what a parlor page is. Go to patreon.com, Champagne Sharks, to become a patron. And take care, everybody. Much love. Be good.